October 16, 1793. Paris. The Place de la Révolution. A woman in a simple white dress climbs the steps to the guillotine. She is pale. Her hair has been cut short. Her hands are bound behind her back. As she steps onto the platform, her foot accidentally lands on that of the executioner. She turns to him, a man named Henri Sanson. And then, the last words of the last Queen of France. "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." She was 37 years old. In a few seconds, her life would end. Her body would be thrown into an unmarked grave. But how did the most powerful woman in France end up here? How did a queen, a symbol of wealth, power, and royalty, become the most hated woman in France? This is the story of Marie Antoinette's final hours. A story of lies, betrayal, and a woman who faced death with a dignity that shocked even her executioners. This is the true story of the Queen's last words. On October 14, 1793, Marie Antoinette was brought before the Revolutionary Tribunal. She had been imprisoned for over a year. Her husband, King Louis XVI, had already been executed 9 months earlier. The charges were treason, conspiring with foreign powers, draining the state treasury. The outcome of the trial was decided long before it began. Maximilien Robespierre and the Committee of Public Safety had already condemned her. The trial was a formality. But what happened in that courtroom shocked even the revolutionaries. 40 witnesses were called. Their testimony was based almost entirely on rumor and hearsay. One witness spoke of drunken orgies he had never actually seen. Marie Antoinette was accused of, and I'm quoting from the historical record, spending 160 dresses a year, of lavish feasts, of sending a fortune to her Austrian brother. But then came the most horrific accusation of all. The revolutionary leader Hébert accused Marie Antoinette of incest with her own son, the 8-year-old Dauphin. The boy had been coached. He had been threatened. He was forced to lie about his mother. For 2 days, Marie Antoinette remained composed. She gave short, non-committal answers. "I do not recall, I never heard talk of anything like that." But when the incest accusation was read, she broke down. She turned to the courtroom, to the mothers in the audience, and said, "If I have not replied, it is because nature itself refuses to respond to such a charge laid against a mother." For the first time, the women in the courtroom, the market women who had stormed the palace in 1789, began to support her. But it was too late. At 4 a.m. on October 16th, after 16 hours of testimony, the tribunal delivered its verdict. Guilty on all charges. Treason. Conspiracy. Treachery. The sentence, death by guillotine. Later that day, Marie Antoinette was asked if she had anything to say. She simply shook her head. She was 37 years old. And she was about to die. In her final hours, the Queen was given writing materials. She wrote a letter to her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth. She wrote, "You know that I have lived on only for them and for you, my dear and tender sister." She wrote to her children, begging Marie-Therese to forgive Louis Charles for his lies. She understood that he was just a child, manipulated by his captors. Think of his age and how easy it is to make a child say what one wants, even things he doesn't understand. The letter never reached her children. It was intercepted by the revolutionaries. After writing, Marie Antoinette refused breakfast. She said, "Everything is over for me." She was dressed in a simple white dress. Her hair was cut off, to make the guillotine's blade cleaner. At 11 a.m., she was taken to the guillotine in an open cart. She was denied the dignity of a closed carriage. The crowds lined the streets. They had come to see the Austrian she-wolf die. But what they saw shocked them. She stepped onto the scaffold with composure. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. A priest who had been appointed to accompany her had been murdered the previous night, a deliberate act to ensure she died without spiritual comfort. Then, the moment came. As she climbed the final step, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. She turned. She apologized. And she spoke her last words. "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." It was 12:15 p.m. The blade fell. The last Queen of France was dead. Her body was thrown into an unmarked grave in the Madeleine Cemetery. The cemetery was filled with the 3,000 victims of the Reign of Terror. There was no coffin, no ceremony, no marker. She remained in that unmarked grave for 21 years. Then, in 1815, during the Bourbon Restoration, her body, and that of Louis XVI, was exhumed. They were given a Christian burial in the Basilica of Saint Denis, the traditional resting place of French kings and queens. Today, the French are divided about their last queen. Polls show that many feel she was treated unfairly. She was a symbol of a corrupt system, but she was also a mother, a daughter, and a woman who faced death with extraordinary grace. But here's the question that history still asks. Was she really guilty of treason? Of conspiring with Austria? The truth is complicated. Yes, she wrote letters to Austria. Yes, she wanted her Austrian relatives to help restore the monarchy. But the revolutionaries didn't want a fair trial. They wanted her head. They wanted to send a message to every royal in Europe. Marie Antoinette's story is a warning about the power of propaganda, a warning about the mob, and a warning about what happens when we allow fear and hatred to replace justice. She died alone. She died in disgrace. But she died with dignity. The last Queen of France had the chance to condemn the revolutionaries as she stood on the scaffold. She didn't. Instead, she apologized for stepping on someone's foot. It was the most human moment of her life. And it came at the very end.